Hey there, welcome to the Her Business Podcast. I'm Suzi Dafnis. I'm so glad you're here because today we're talking about something that's been on my mind, and it's been the topic of conversation inside of our community. Our community is called the Growth Network, and it's for women business owners who want to lead their businesses differently. And the topic that I'm hinting at is this idea of the weight that we carry. Now, that's not just the things that we can measure, like the hours we work or the number of emails sitting in our inbox. I'm talking about the invisible weight, the mental load, the emotional load, the responsibility, the feeling that somehow everything depends on us. Because for a long time, if I'm really honest, my business felt heavy. And if you looked at it from the outside, you'd probably say that everything was going really well. But underneath that, I was carrying too much. My team was carrying too much. There were too many decisions that needed to be made. And there were services that used to be fun to deliver that became, well, not so fun. And over time, I realized that this business that I built over 30 years started feeling, well, heavier than it should. Now, if you've known me for any length of time, you know that I love change. I love innovation. I love trying new things. But I'm also very considered. When I make changes inside of her business, whether it's the type of clients we work with or what it is that we do to work with those clients, I think about our women very deeply. I think about my team. I think about every decision and how it affects other people. So when we recently rebranded, we changed our core membership, we lowered our prices to what they were 20 years ago, we introduced some new technology, we got rid of other technology, and we redesigned so much of how we operate. It wasn't that I woke up one morning wanting a fresh logo. It was because I wanted a lighter business. And something really interesting happened. After one of our recent member sessions, someone who's been part of our community for years sent me a voice message. And she simply said, "Suzi, welcome back." She said, "Your energy feels different. You seem clearer. You seem happier. You seem more like yourself again." And another friend said almost exactly the same thing. She said, "It just feels right." And last week, one of my mentorees said to me, "Suzi, if I'm really honest, it was like you'd lost your luster." She said, "And now you're back." And these comments meant so much to me. And I appreciate people being so honest and willing to share with me. Because it wasn't that the business had changed. It had, but I had changed. I had come back to myself. And that's what I want to explore with you today, because I don't think you need more information or necessarily new strategies, and I don't think you need another productivity hack or another way to use AI. I think many of us simply need to carry less, to have a lighter business model, to do lighter marketing, to have a team that makes things lighter for us because they leverage us and they take away the stress. So one of the things that we explored recently inside the Growth Shift is our monthly live event for our members, was this idea of looking at what in our business feels heavy and getting rid of it or changing it. And so I asked everyone a simple question. I said, how does your business feel today? And the answers came flooding in. Things like heavy, busy, reactive, overwhelming, excited, realigned, profitable but busy but not the good kind of busy. And one woman said she'd realized she'd become reactive instead of intentional. So you heard, not all those answers were people seeking help. Some of them were like, this is really great. But most of them felt like something needed to change. One woman said she reached the point where everything felt urgent, and that's a very stressful place to be. And someone else said that even the work she loved was beginning to drain her just because there was so much of it. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Because businesses don't become heavy overnight. They become heavy one decision at a time. Like when you say yes to a client that you really don't have time for, or you charge a price that you really can't afford to charge, or you add one more offer because you feel you have to, or you keep one responsibility close to your chest because it's easier than explaining it to someone else, or you don't quite trust anyone else to do it, or you stay on one more social media platform than you want to be on, or deliver something like I was doing simply because people love it, even though perhaps you've moved on. Before you know it, you're carrying a business that no longer fits the person you've become. And I often encourage women to think of themselves as CEOs, not because it's a fancy title. I do believe as the owner of the business, we are also the CEO in most cases, unless we're a big business and then we might have another CEO. And the reason I suggest this to women is because it changes how you think about your role. But if we're honest, most of us aren't being chief executive officers. We're being chief everything officers. We're the head of marketing, the head of finance, the head of technology, the head of sales, the head of operations, the head of customer service, the head of human resources. And somewhere in there, we're trying to be visionary leaders as well. No wonder it feels heavy. And the irony is that growth can actually make this situation worse. Because if your business grows, but your structures don't change, you simply have more to carry. More clients, more offers, more decisions, more complexity, more funds to manage, more responsibility. Growth without structure just means more weight. And that was one of my biggest realizations. As I reflected on what was weighing me down and listened to hundreds of conversations with women in business, I noticed that most of the heaviness tends to show up in 4 areas. And I'm going to give them to you right now. The first is your offers. If you've ever kept something simply because you've always sold it, even though it no longer excites you, but maybe it's profitable, maybe clients love it, but every time someone buys it, you think, ugh, because deep down, you know you've outgrown it. It's no longer fun. It doesn't light you up. That's what was happening for me. And late last year, I decided to walk away from one of our long-running mastermind programs. It was a beautiful program. It was successful. People loved it. It brought in a big chunk of revenue every year, but it no longer felt aligned with where I wanted to spend my energy and what I wanted to be putting out in the world. Then, more recently, we completely redesigned our membership. We simplified it. We narrowed the focus. We lowered the price to what it was 20 years ago. Now, on paper, I know that sounds like a terrible business decision. Charge less, really? But here's what also disappeared: pressure. The pressure to over-deliver simply because of the higher price. The pressure to justify every inclusion and deliverable. The pressure that I'd placed on myself. And the result? Everything feels lighter. And it reminded me that sometimes we're not exhausted because we're working too hard. We're exhausted because we're carrying an offer that we have already outgrown, an offer that needs to change. Right? So that's the first area of heaviness. And these areas that I'm mentioning, they come from research with women business owners. The second place where businesses become heavy is our team, or sometimes it's the lack of a team. One woman who was on our recent training program realized she'd become the bottleneck in her own business because everybody was waiting for her approval. Another one admitted she'd been putting off hiring someone for months. Someone else realized she spent so much time checking someone else's work that she'd created another job for herself. Can you relate? Business really is a team sport, and that doesn't necessarily mean dozens of employees. It means different things to different businesses. For you, it could be bringing on a virtual assistant or a bookkeeper or a designer or an AI assistant or a mentor or a coach or a community around you. Support can come in many, many forms. But the question I keep asking myself now is, what am I still doing that someone else could do? And not because I can't do it or don't have the skill. I'm talking about the things that I shouldn't have to do. Because every hour I spend doing something someone else could do, it's an hour that I'm not doing the work only I can do, the skills that only I can bring to the business. So that's the second area I want you to think about making lighter, is how do you use team more effectively to become lighter? And if you need help with that, that's exactly what we're developing programs and courses for this year. Really working with women in small business management, small business leadership. Then there's marketing. Now you think marketing, fun. Well, not for everyone. This came up over and over again. Women weren't saying they hated marketing. Many loved the idea of it. They believed in what they offered, but marketing itself had become heavy. One woman said she loved her work, but struggled to get in front of enough of the right people. Who's been there? Another one realized she'd been trying to be everywhere at once. Someone else said she'd reached the point where even creating content felt like another bloody thing on her endless to-do list. And I understand that. For the last couple of years, we've been showing up consistently on Instagram. We've created hundreds of reels. We've written posts. We've experimented. We've learnt a lot. Some of that activity has worked beautifully. A lot of it hasn't. And so recently, I asked myself, not how can we create more content, but is this the lightest way for us to market? Because they're two very different questions, right? Creating more content may or may not get us what we want. What is the lightest way for us to market? And what's light for me may feel heavy for you, and vice versa. So we want to really find what that is. Sometimes we do, as I said, assume that good marketing means doing more platforms, more emails, more videos, more launches, more funnels, more visibility. more AI. And I say that very cynically. But what if good marketing isn't about doing more? What if it's about doing the things that suit you? I've learned over the years that every successful business owner has a marketing style that feels natural. Some people love speaking from a stage. Some people love hosting workshops, people like me. Some people love podcasting. Others thrive on referrals or networking or building partnerships. Some genuinely love writing. Others are brilliant on video. And so the problem isn't that you're bad at marketing and that's why it feels heavy. The problem is often that you're trying to market like someone else. If you look at those women on Instagram holding their microphones in their hands, trying to say something that will compel us to buy or click or download, you know that many of them, they've really had to push themselves to do it. It's not coming naturally to them. And if you really feel into it, you can sense it. They've done 10 takes to get that one video. Ask me how. I know this. And you know what else I know? When marketing feels performative, it feels heavy. When it feels authentic, it becomes energizing. And here's something else I've been thinking about. For a while, we had positioned her business almost exclusively around established businesses generating 6 figures and beyond. And that has served us well. We have a beautiful community. But the sad reality is that most women business owners aren't quite in the 6 figures and beyond. In fact, only 13% of women-owned businesses generate more than $100,000 a year, and that is a statistic that we are working really hard to change. And in fact, when we surveyed our members generate more revenue for each of their small businesses than most businesses in Australia do. So I'm very excited about that. And they didn't always. But going back to us going very narrow on our focus, thinking about it more recently, we said, you know what, we've unintentionally made marketing harder than it needs to be. Let's make a really good offer. Let's put together something that women are going to love. And then let's make membership more accessible. This was a marketing decision. It allowed us to reconnect with who we've always wanted to serve, and that's women business owners. And once again, everything feels lighter. So sometimes the answer isn't working harder to market what you've got. Sometimes it's redesigning what you've got so it naturally attracts the people that you most want to help. Right? So that is number 3. So quick recap of what we covered so far. So we just talked about our marketing. We talked earlier about our team. And then before that, we talked about our offers. So I said there were 4 areas. What is the 4th area? I'm just going to scroll back down on my notes. Here it is. It's life. What? The life that disappears around the business. I laughed at myself recently. Isn't it great when you can do that? Because when I came to New York, I'm living in New York for 6 months at the moment, I had this beautiful vision. I imagined I'd work kind of Sydney hours. I'd start around 6 p.m. and then I'd finish around 10 or 11. And I'd have my mornings and my afternoons free to explore the city, to walk through Central Park, to visit museums, to meet up with friends. Instead, I somehow started working in the middle of the day and finishing around midnight. So I was working longer hours than I had back home. So have you ever done that? You create the life you want and then you quietly drift away from it? Because running a business has this incredible ability to expand into every available space if we let it. And so that morning you promised yourself, gone. The Friday afternoon you were going to take off, gone. The holiday where you kept checking your phone the whole time. We did an interesting poll about that, which I'll share with you in another episode. The dinner where you're there, but mentally you're writing tomorrow's email and you keep checking your messages. And we tell ourselves it's only temporary, and sometimes it is, but sometimes temporary becomes kind of our normal. One of my favorite conversations inside of our community recently had actually nothing to do with business. We asked everyone a simple question. We're always asking each other, what do you do? And so we asked, what do you do for fun? Not what's your next goal, just what do you do for fun? And the answers were so joyous. Women who are doing singing and roller skating, astronomy, painting, yoga, travel, ceramics, bell ringing. I had to ask about that one. Bell ringing? Yeah, it's a thing. And this exercise of stating what we do for fun reminded me of my very dear friend Valerie Khoo, who's an artist. She's also the CEO of the Australian Writers' Centre. Years ago, we were out and she said to me, I think I need a hobby. All I do is work. I just need a hobby. And so she started to follow her curiosity. She took classes on all sorts of things, from woodwork to macrame to music. She experimented. And one of the experiments was art, like with the painting brush. Today, she's an accomplished artist who exhibits her work, who sells her work, who creates because she loves it. And it started with this one decision to make space for something that wasn't productive, that wasn't business related. Sometimes the thing your business needs most is for you to have a life outside of it. And I know that can feel hard when you're so busy, but if you make the space for life, the business will flourish. As I reflected on everything that has changed for me this year, I realized almost every shift I'd made came down to 4 decisions. What I delegated, what I decided about, that I was going to do or not do, things that I ditched, offers, programs, and things that I redesigned. I like to redesign. So I delegated the things that no longer needed me. I made decisions I'd been sitting on far too long. I let go of things that had served their purpose. And I redesigned parts of the business so that they reflected who we are today, not who we were 5 or 10 years ago when some decisions had been made earlier. Now, none of these new decisions was easy, but every single one of them has made the business feel lighter. When we explored this together inside the Growth Network, I asked everyone a final question. What are you going to put down this month? And the answers were incredibly honest. I'm going to hire someone. I'm going to get a cleaner. I'm going to say no to work till after August. I'm delegating technology. I'm stopping trying to do everything myself. I'm letting go of guilt. I'm redesigning my membership. I'm making the decision I've been avoiding. Now, these are all different businesses, different women, different lives, different answers, but the same intention. And that intention is to stop carrying things that no longer belong to them. And perhaps that's the question I'd like to leave you with today. What are you carrying that no longer belongs to you? Maybe it's a client, maybe it's an offer, maybe it's a responsibility, maybe it's a limiting belief, or maybe it's a social media platform, or the expectation that you have to do everything yourself. Because growth in our business isn't about adding something. Sometimes the greatest growth comes from putting something down, from making one brave decision, from creating a little more space, from giving yourself permission to redesign your business to support the life that you actually want. One of my favorite lines from our recent Growth Shift session was this: I don't want you to learn how to carry more, I want you to carry less. That was my directive. I think that's become my philosophy for this season of business. And that's not because I'm interested in doing less for the sake of doing less, but because when we stop carrying things that drain us, we have more energy for the work that matters. We become more creative, more present, more generous, more decisive, more ourselves. And interestingly, that's usually when the business grows. Not because we worked harder, but because we finally had the capacity to lead. So this week, before you open another email, before you write another social post, before you add one more thing to your to-do list, just pause for a moment and ask yourself, what am I carrying that no longer belongs to me? And then, what's the thing that I could put down today? It can be a small thing. Because your next season of growth might not begin with doing more. It might begin with feeling lighter. I'm sorry about my hoarse throat. I'm not sure what's going on. But I want to thank you so much for being here. I'd love to know your thoughts on this topic. You can write to me at podcast@herbusiness.com, or you can message me on Instagram. And if you can hear that siren in the background, this is New York City, babe. This is what you hear all day long. I don't actually hear it all day long. We have a really quiet apartment that we're living in, but I can hear it right now, and I'm afraid that you can too. You're going to find us over on Instagram at @herbusiness. Now, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who you think would benefit. You can also send me a direct message to let me know that you enjoyed it. You'll find me over on Instagram. And inside the community, if you're not already part of the Growth Network, this is the Her Business Growth Network, which is our community for women business owners. Simply head over to herbusinessnetwork.com to join us. We have a special founding member price at the moment. We haven't seen this price for 20 years. It's $37 a month. So now would be a really good time to get in if you are looking to support your business. This price will not last, so I'm encouraging you to head over there today. So that's herbusinessnetwork.com. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you next time right here on the Her Business Podcast. Bye for now.